At the edge of the galaxy, silence wasn't just an absence of sound, it was a presence. It pressed against the hull of the exploration vessel Aurelian like something alive, something watching. Commander Elias Varn stood at the center of the bridge, arms folded, eyes fixed on the endless black beyond the viewport. The stars here were sparse, thin streaks of distant light scattered across an ocean of darkness. It felt wrong, unnatural. "Long-range sweep complete," said Lieutenant Mara Ilias from the sensor station. Her voice carried a faint tension she didn't bother hiding. "No habitable systems within 12 parsecs. Radiation levels nominal. No." She paused. Ilias didn't turn. "Report." "I'm picking up something." That got his attention. He stepped closer, the low hum of the ship's systems filling the silence between them. "Define something." Mara's fingers moved quickly across the console. "Signal, very faint, directional, origin point ahead of us." The bridge stirred. Conversations died instantly. "Natural?" Elias asked. "No," she said quietly, "too structured." A cold thread of curiosity slipped into his chest. "Put it through analysis." The ship's AI responded instantly, its calm synthetic voice echoing through the bridge. "Analyzing signal pattern, processing." Seconds stretched. Then, pattern recognition complete. Elias felt something tighten in his gut, and there was the briefest hesitation, something the AI wasn't programmed to do. Signal matches archived linguistic structures. Confidence level, 99.98%. Elias narrowed his eyes. Language. A pause. Then the words that changed everything. Origin human. The bridge went completely still. "No," whispered someone behind him. "That's not possible." Elias didn't respond. His mind was already racing, rejecting the conclusion even as the evidence mounted. Humanity had barely spread beyond the inner spiral arms. This region, this far out, was untouched, unmapped, unknown. There was no record of any human expedition ever coming close. "Play it," Elias ordered. A low, distorted sound filled the bridge, static at first, then something beneath it, a pattern repeating. Myra adjusted the filters. The noise sharpened. And then it became a voice. Broken, fragmented, ancient. "You hear this?" Every muscle in Elias' body went rigid. "Not supposed to be here." The signal cut briefly, replaced by a surge of interference. Then it returned stronger. "Turn back." Silence followed. Heavy, suffocating. Elias exhaled slowly, forcing his thoughts into order. Could be a mimic signal, some unknown species replicating human patterns. Mara shook her head. "No, the linguistic drift, the syntax, it matches early Earth dialects, centuries old." "That's impossible," said the navigation officer. Elias didn't correct him. "Because it was." "Source location?" Elias asked. Mara tapped her console. A set of coordinates appeared, hovering in the air between them. "Fixed point," she said. "It's not moving." Elias studied the coordinates. They pointed deeper into the dark, into a region where even the faintest stars disappeared entirely. "A dead zone. Distance 3 hours at current speed." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Elias felt it too, that instinctive resistance, the quiet voice in the back of his mind telling him this was wrong. That whatever was out there wasn't meant to be found. The signal pulsed again. Stronger this time. Clearer. "If you're hearing this." A pause. "It's already too late." Myra swallowed. "Commander." Elias closed his eyes for a brief moment. Protocol said withdraw, report, avoid unknown signals, especially ones that made no sense. But something deeper pulled at him. Curiosity. Or maybe something darker. "Set a course," he said. The bridge froze. "Sir," Mara asked quietly. Elias opened his eyes, staring into the void ahead. "If it's human," he said, voice steady, "we don't ignore it." A long moment passed. Then the navigation officer nodded slowly, adjusting trajectory. The Aurelian shifted. Its engines hummed softly as it turned toward the coordinates, the darkness swallowing the last thin traces of starlight ahead. As the ship aligned with its new path, something strange happened. The stars in front of them flickered. Just for a second. Elias frowned. Did you see that? Mara checked her readings. Sensor glitch, maybe. The stars flickered again. This time longer. And then, they disappeared. Not dimmed. Not blocked by dust. Gone. As if something massive had moved between the Aurelian and the distant light. Something so large it swallowed entire constellations. The bridge fell into stunned silence. Mara's voice came out as a whisper. Commander, there's nothing on sensors. Elias stared into the darkness. Because he could feel it now. That presence. That watching silence. The signal returned one last time. Perfectly clear. Right behind them. You should have turned back. And the void moved. The void didn't just move. It followed. Full scan, now. Elias snapped, gripping the edge of the command console as the Aurelian's engines surged forward. Mara's hands flew across her station. I'm trying. Something's interfering. No, not interfering. It's like the sensors don't recognize what's out there. Visual feed, Elias said. The main viewport flickered. For a moment, there was only darkness. Then shapes began to emerge. Massive, broken, drifting. The Aurelian crossed an invisible threshold, and the void gave way to a field of wreckage. A graveyard. Dear God, someone whispered. Ships. Thousands of them. Alien in design, vast structures of impossible geometry, some stretching kilometers in length. Their hulls were torn open, twisted, melted in places that defied physics. Others looked erased. Sections simply missing, as if reality itself had been cut away. No signs of active energy, Myra reported, voice hushed. No life readings, no distress beacons. Elias stepped closer to the glass. What happened here? No one answered. Because there was no answer that made sense. These aren't from one species, the science officer added. Multiple designs, multiple technologies, this was a convergence. A battle, the pilot suggested. Elias shook his head slowly. No. He pointed at one of the drifting hulls, a massive crescent-shaped vessel, split cleanly down the center. There's no pattern, he said. No formation, no defensive positioning. He exhaled. This wasn't a battle. His voice dropped. It was an execution. Silence swallowed the bridge. The Aurelian drifted deeper into the graveyard, weaving between the remains of civilizations long gone. The scale of destruction was overwhelming, like flying through the aftermath of something that had wiped out entire histories in seconds. Then Mara stiffened. Commander, I've found the signal source. Elias turned sharply. Where? She highlighted a point ahead. At first, Elias didn't see it. Then the ship adjusted its angle, and it came into view. At the center of the graveyard, something remained untouched. A monolith. Perfectly smooth, jet black. Its surface reflected no light, as if it consumed it entirely. It stood in stark contrast to the chaos around it, pristine, untouched, deliberate. And unmistakably, human. That's not possible, the pilot murmured. Elias felt a chill crawl up his spine. Bring us closer, he said quietly. As the Aurelian approached, the ship began to tremble slightly. Systems are fluctuating, Mara warned. Navigation is unstable. I'm getting feedback loops across multiple channels. The lights dimmed, then steadied. Hold position at 1,000 meters, Elias ordered. The ship slowed, hovering before the monolith. Up close, it was even more unsettling. There were no markings, no seams, no visible structure. Just a massive, silent presence. Watching. The signal returned. Louder now. Clearer. You were never meant to find us. The voice echoed through the bridge, no longer distorted. Human, but wrong. Like it had been stretched across time. Elias stepped forward, his reflection faintly visible in the viewport. Identify yourself, he said firmly. For a moment, there was no response. Then, still asking questions, the tone had changed. Colder. Systems are spiking again, Mara shouted. Commander, something's happening. Before she could finish, the entire ship jolted. Elias grabbed the console to steady himself. Report. Mara's eyes were wide as she stared at her readings. The wreckage. Elias turned and froze. All around them, the dead ships were moving. Slowly, deliberately, rotating in place. Their broken hulls creaked silently as they shifted, thousands of massive structures turning in unison. Toward the Aurelian. That's not possible, the pilot whispered, voice trembling. No propulsion, Mara said. No energy signatures, nothing is driving this. Elias' heart pounded in his chest. Then what is? The movement stopped. Every ruined vessel now faced them. Like an audience. Like witnesses. Or worse. Like guardians. The monolith pulsed. A faint ripple passed across its surface, distorting the light around it. Then the voice returned. Closer. No longer coming through the speakers. But from everywhere. You came anyway. Elias felt the words more than heard them. A pressure inside his skull. Curiosity always the same. The lights flickered violently. Alarms began to scream. Multiple system failures, Mara shouted. We're losing control. Elias ignored the chaos, his eyes locked on the monolith. Who are you? He demanded. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the surface of the monolith shifted. Not opening. Not breaking. But changing. Like something beneath it was waking up. We are what you left behind. The temperature on the bridge dropped suddenly. Frost crept along the edges of the consoles. The crew stood frozen, unable to look away. And now, a pause. Heavy, terrifying. You will remember. The monolith flared with blinding light. And every ship in the graveyard surged forward at once. Brace. The command barely left Elias' mouth before the graveyard moved. Not drifting. Not colliding. Advancing. Thousands of dead ships surged forward, not fast, but with unstoppable intent. Their broken hulls glided through space like ghosts obeying a single, silent command. Engines full reverse, the pilot shouted. The Aurelian roared to life, thrusters blazing as it struggled to pull away. Warning alarms screamed across the bridge. Navigation isn't responding properly, Mara yelled. Something's overriding our trajectory. Elias gritted his teeth. Manual control. I'm trying. A massive, fractured vessel drifted into their path, its jagged hull spinning slowly. Collision course. Hard port. The ship veered at the last second, scraping dangerously close. Metal groaned as the gravitational wake of the drifting giant pulled at them. Elias steadied himself. We're not getting out like this. His eyes snapped back to the monolith. It wasn't just the center of the graveyard. It was controlling it. Bring us closer, he ordered. The bridge went silent. Mara turned toward him, disbelief in her eyes. Commander, that thing just activated the entire field. And it'll keep doing it until we stop running, Elias cut in. That structure is the source. A beat. Then the pilot exhaled sharply, adjusting course. The Aurelian pivoted, fighting against invisible resistance, and accelerated straight toward the monolith. The dead ships shifted again. Faster this time. Closing in. As if trying to block their path. Shields at 70%, Mara called out. We won't survive sustained impact. We don't need to, Elias said quietly. Just a few seconds. The monolith loomed larger in the viewport, its surface still rippling with that unnatural liquid darkness. Distance 500 meters. A massive wreck swung into their path. Too close. Punch through. The Aurelian surged forward, skimming along the broken hull of the alien ship. Sparks erupted across the shields as fragments scraped against them. Shields dropping 60-50. Hold it together, Elias barked. 300 meters. The monolith pulsed. A wave of distortion spread outward, space itself bending around it. Elias felt it again. That pressure, inside his head. Closer. The voice wasn't external anymore. It was inside them. 200 meters. Shields at 40%. The graveyard tightened around them. No escape. Only one direction left. Forward. 100 meters. The monolith suddenly opened. Not with doors. Not mechanically. Its surface dissolved, folding inward like liquid shadow, revealing a glowing interior. Now Elias shouted. The Aurelian shot forward, straight into the heart of the monolith. Silence. The transition was instant. One moment, chaos, alarms, death closing in. The next, stillness. The ship drifted gently inside a vast chamber, illuminated by a soft, ambient light. No alarms. No shaking. No resistance. Report, Elias said, his voice low. Myra stared at her console, stunned. All systems stable, no damage, external readings gone. Gone. We're not detecting the graveyard anymore. It's like we're in a completely isolated space. Elias looked out the viewport. The chamber stretched endlessly in all directions, its walls smooth and seamless, glowing faintly with shifting patterns. And then he saw them. Markings, covering the inner surface. Zoom in, he said. The display magnified, and Elias' breath caught. Words, carved into the walls. Human words. Languages layered over each other, English, Arabic, Mandarin, Hindi, spanning centuries of evolution. Messages, names, fragments of history. This isn't random, the science officer whispered. It's recorded. Elias stepped forward slowly. It's a timeline, a history humanity had never known. Commander, Myra's voice trembled. I'm picking up a life sign. Elias' heart skipped. Where? She pointed ahead. At the center of the chamber, a platform rose from the floor, surrounded by intricate machinery humming with ancient energy. And on that platform, a man. He was thin, pale, worn by time. Cables and conduits connected his body to the surrounding systems, pulsing faintly with light. Alive. Barely. Medical team. Wait, Elias said, raising a hand. Something felt wrong. He stepped closer. The man's chest rose slowly, shallow breaths. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, his eyes opened. A faint glow flickered within them, and they locked onto Elias. Recognition. Relief. Finally, the man whispered, his voice fragile but clear. You came back. Elias felt a chill run through him. Who are you? The man studied him for a long moment. Then a weak smile touched his lips. I'm what's left, he said softly. Of the first humans. The room fell silent. Elias' mind struggled to process the words. That's not possible, he said. The man's gaze didn't waver. We said that too, once. Elias stepped closer. Explain. The man's smile faded. Pain flickered in his eyes. We didn't explore the galaxy, he said slowly. A pause. Heavy. Then, we ran. Elias felt the weight of those words settle into his chest. From what? He asked. The man's eyes darkened. Not with fear, but with memory. From ourselves. The lights in the chamber flickered. Mara gasped. Commander, I'm detecting external activity again, something surrounding the monolith. Before Elias could respond, the man spoke again. This time his voice was different. Stronger. Urgent. They've found you. Elias froze. Who? The man's glowing eyes locked onto his. And for the first time, Elias saw fear in them. Those who erased us. Outside the monolith. Something vast arrived. And it was not alone. The chamber dimmed. Not completely, but enough that the glowing inscriptions along the walls pulsed like fatting memories, flickering in uneven rhythm. Elias didn't look away from the man on the platform. "Start talking," he said, "now." The man, Aaron, exhaled slowly, as if even breathing required effort after centuries of waiting. "You already know part of it," Aaron said. "You just don't remember." Elias frowned, "Then help me." Aaron's glowing eyes shifted past him, toward the curved walls filled with human languages, histories, fragments. "We were not born on one world," Aaron said quietly. "Not the way you believe." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Elias crossed his arms. "Earth is our origin, that's not true anymore," Aaron interrupted, not harshly, but with a weight that silenced the room. A pause. Then he continued. "We spread once," he said, "farther than your maps could ever show, faster than any species had a right to." Images flickered across the chamber walls, unprompted. Cities among the stars. Massive structures orbiting dying suns. Human ships, sleek, powerful, moving like gods between systems. The crew stared in stunned silence. Mara whispered. "That's not possible." "It was," Aaron said. "We evolved beyond limits, technology, biology, even thought itself." Elias felt something shift inside him, not belief. Recognition. Like a memory he couldn't reach. "What stopped you?" he asked. Aaron's gaze darkened. They did. The images changed. Alien fleets, vast, coordinated, unified, appearing from every direction. Not one species. Many. Hundreds. Different designs, different technologies, but moving as one. "They watched us grow," Aaron said, "and they realized something." The chamber trembled faintly. "That we would surpass them." Aaron shook his head slowly. "No." His voice dropped. "That we would stop needing them." Silence pressed in. "They feared irrelevance," Aaron continued, "and when fear spreads across civilizations." The images shifted again. War, but not like anything the crew had ever seen. Stars collapsing. Planets erased. Entire systems blinking out of existence. Not destruction. Removal. "They didn't fight us," Aaron said. "Not in the way you understand." Elias' jaw tightened. "Then what did they do?" Aaron met his eyes. "They erased us." The word hung in the air. "Not just physically," Aaron said. "They attacked our existence, our history, our timeline." Myra shook her head. "That's not possible, you can't just—" "They could," Aaron said quietly, "because we taught them how." The room fell into stunned silence. Elias took a slow step forward. "You're saying humanity created the very thing that destroyed it?" Aaron nodded faintly. "We pushed too far. We broke the boundaries of reality itself, and they used it against us." Elias felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "Earth," he said slowly. "What is it then?" Aaron's expression softened. "A reset point." The words hit harder than anything else. "A place where the last fragments of humanity were placed," Aaron continued. "Stripped of memory, stripped of power." "A prison," Elias said. Aaron didn't answer. He didn't need to. Elias turned away, running a hand through his hair. "If that's true, why leave this?" He gestured around them. "Why leave this place intact?" Aaron's eyes flickered toward the core of the structure, somewhere deeper within. "Because we failed." Elias turned back sharply. "Failed what?" Aaron's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "To erase everything we had become." Before Elias could respond, the entire chamber shook violently. Alarms erupted across the Aurelian. Mara spun to her console. "Commander, multiple incoming signatures, massive energy spikes." "Location." "Outside the monolith." The walls flickered, shifting into a translucent display. Space beyond the structure came into view. And Elias felt his breath catch. Ships. Not wreckage. Alive. Hundreds of them. Sleek, angular designs, unlike anything humanity had encountered. Their surfaces shimmered with shifting energy fields, distorting the space around them. They weren't drifting. They were positioning, surrounding the monolith. "They found us," Aaron whispered. Elias turned to him. "Who are they?" Aaron didn't look away from the display. "The Coalition." The ships began to glow, energy building along their hulls in perfect synchronization. Mara's voice trembled, weapons charging. A transmission cut through every system on the ship. "Cold. Precise. Inhuman. Anomaly located." Elias clenched his fists. Temporal contamination confirmed. Aaron closed his eyes, initiating final erasure. The chamber lights dimmed further. The monolith pulsed beneath their feet. Elias looked back at Aaron. "You said they erased humanity before." Aaron opened his eyes slowly. "Pain, regret, and something else. Fear." "Yes," he said. Elias' voice hardened. "Then how are we still here?" Aaron's gaze shifted, past Elias toward the depths of the structure. Toward something unseen. Something waiting. "Because," Aaron said quietly, "we didn't destroy the last thing we built." A deep, resonating pulse echoed through the chamber. "Low. Powerful. Alive." The Coalition ships outside fired. And the monolith answered. The first strike never landed. From the outside, it should have. The Coalition fleet unleashed a synchronized barrage, beams of condensed energy that bent space as they traveled, tearing through vacuum like cracks in reality itself. But the moment they touched the monolith, they vanished. No impact. No explosion. No residue. Just gone. Inside the chamber, Elias staggered as a deep vibration rolled through the structure beneath his feet. "What just happened?" Mara breathed. Aaron didn't answer immediately. His glowing eyes were fixed on something deeper within the monolith, something beyond the chamber walls. "It's waking up," he said softly. Another pulse echoed, stronger this time. The walls flickered, the ancient inscriptions shifting like they were alive, reacting. Elias steadied himself. "You said there was something we failed to destroy." Aaron nodded slowly. "Yes." "Then we're going to it," Elias said, already moving. "Now." They descended through the monolith. Not by elevator, not by any visible mechanism. The floor beneath them dissolved into light, reforming beneath their feet as they moved downward through layers of the structure. The deeper they went, the stronger the energy became. It pressed against their bodies, against their minds. Mara winced. "I can feel it." "So can I," Elias muttered. And he didn't like it. It wasn't just power. It was awareness. The chamber opened beneath them. Vast. Impossible. Elias stopped dead. At the center of the space, a star burned. Small, contained, but undeniably real. Its surface rippled with controlled fusion, swirling arcs of light folding into themselves as if bound by invisible hands. The crew stood frozen. "That's," the science officer choked. "That's a stellar core contained in a confined space." "That's not possible," Mara whispered. Aaron stepped forward, his expression heavy with memory. "It is," he said, "because we made it possible." Elias' voice dropped. "What is it?" Aaron looked at the star. And for the first time, there was fear in his eyes. "A failsafe." The star pulsed faintly, as if responding to his presence. "If humanity was ever erased," Aaron continued, "this would remain." Elias felt a chill spread through him. Remain to do what? Aaron hesitated. "Then, to end the ones who erased us." Silence fell like a blade. Elias stared at the contained star. That thing could wipe out fleets. Aaron shook his head slowly. "Not just fleets." The implications settled in. Civilizations. Systems. Entire histories. Gone. Another violent tremor shook the chamber. Mara's voice cut through the moment. "Commander, the fleet outside, they're escalating. Energy output just spiked exponentially." The walls shifted again, revealing the outside view. More ships had arrived. Hundreds, no, thousands. They surrounded the monolith completely now, forming a perfect sphere of silent, waiting destruction. "They're not attacking," Elia said. Aaron's expression darkened. "They're preparing something worse." As if on cue, the fleet moved. Every ship aligned simultaneously. Energy built, not as beams, but as something denser, heavier. Reality around them began to distort, space folding inward toward a single point. Mara's voice trembled. "I don't understand what I'm seeing. It's like they're trying to collapse the entire structure into." "Nothing," Aaron finished quietly. Elias turned sharply. "You mean destroy it?" Aaron shook his head. "No," he said. "Erase it." The word hit harder than any weapon. Elias looked back at the star. "If they succeed." "They don't just destroy this place," Aaron said. "They remove it from existence like we were." Elias clenched his jaw. "And the weapon?" Aaron's gaze returned to the star. "It activates automatically if the structure is threatened." As if responding to those words, the star pulsed. Brighter, stronger. The energy in the chamber surged violently. Mara stumbled. "It's reacting." The star's surface shifted, its light intensifying into something almost blinding. Elias stepped closer, despite the heat pressing against him. "Can you control it?" he asked. Aaron didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out, his trembling hand hovering inches from the glowing sphere. "It was never meant to be controlled," he said softly. Elias felt his stomach drop. Then what was it meant to do? Aaron finally looked at him. And this time there was no hesitation. "No matter the cost," he said. "To finish the war." Outside, the fleet unleashed their attack. Space folded inward, reality collapsing toward the monolith. Inside, the star ignited. Not brighter, but deeper, like something ancient had just awakened within it. The chamber shook violently as cracks of light spread across the walls, fractures not in metal, but in reality itself. Mara screamed, "It's destabilizing." Elias grabbed Aaron, "Shut it down." Aaron didn't resist, but he didn't agree. "You don't understand," he said, voice breaking. "This is what we became before they erased us." The star pulsed again. Stronger, wilder. Outside, the first coalition ship vanished. Not destroyed. Erased. Then another. And another. Elias stared in horror. "What have you done?" Aaron's eyes filled with something far worse than fear. "Acceptance." "I didn't do this," he whispered. "We did." The star flared violently, and the heavens began to burn. The star didn't explode. It unfolded. Light didn't spread outward. It bent, twisted, and rewrote everything it touched. The chamber around them warped, stretching as if reality itself were struggling to keep its shape. Elias staggered, gripping the edge of the platform as the glow intensified. "What is it doing?" he shouted. Aaron didn't answer. He couldn't look away. Outside the monolith, the coalition fleet unleashed its final assault. Space collapsed inward, an artificial singularity forming around the structure, compressing everything toward a point of absolute nothingness. But the star answered. A pulse surged outward. Not energy. Not force. Correction. The collapsing space stopped. Then reversed. The singularity unraveled, folding back into nothing as if it had never existed. Ships caught in its event horizon simply vanished. Not destroyed. Not broken. Unwritten. Inside the chamber, Mara gasped. "Commander, they're disappearing, entire ships just gone." Elias stared at the shifting display, disbelief etched across his face. "That's not possible." Aaron's voice came, low and distant. "It is," he said. "This is what we became." The star pulsed again. Harder. Faster. The light began to fracture into jagged lines that spread outward like cracks across glass, but they weren't cracks in space. They were cracks in existence. Where the fractures passed, stars dimmed. Then blinked out. Elias felt his chest tighten. It's spreading beyond the fleet. Mara turned, panic rising in her voice. Commander, it's not targeting them, it's expanding. Aaron's hands trembled. It was never precise, he said. It was never meant to be. Elias rounded on him, then stop it. Aaron shook his head slowly, anguish written across his face. I can't. Another pulse. Stronger. The monolith groaned, not physically, but conceptually, like something deeper was being strained beyond its limits. The inscriptions along the walls began to flicker rapidly, centuries of human language appearing and disappearing in chaotic bursts. Memories, histories, all destabilizing. Elias stepped closer to the star, shielding his eyes against the intensity. There has to be a way to shut it down. Aaron finally turned to him, eyes filled with a terrible truth. This is the shutdown. Elias froze. What? Aaron's voice broke. It activates when everything else is gone, when there's nothing left to preserve. He looked at the burning star. It ends everything. Outside, the coalition fleet changed tactics. The remaining ships began to retreat, breaking formation, scattering in all directions. But it didn't matter. The fractures followed them. One by one, ships blinked out of existence, erased before they could escape. For the first time, the hunters were running. Mara's voice trembled. They're retreating. Elias didn't feel relief. Only dread. Because they know, he said. Aaron nodded faintly. They've seen this before. The star surged violently. A shockwave rippled outward, not visible but felt. Elias dropped to one knee as something slammed into his mind, images flooding in without warning. Worlds burning. Galaxies collapsing. Humanity standing at the center of it all, unchanged, unmoved, unstoppable. He gasped, pulling himself back. What was that? Aaron looked at him. Memory, he said. Elias shook his head. No, that was us. Yes. The word landed like a hammer. Another pulse. Closer now. The fractures reached deeper into space, beyond the battlefield. Elias looked up sharply. It's not stopping at them. Mara's voice was barely steady. Commander, I'm detecting cascading instability across nearby systems, if this continues. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Elias stared at the star, realization dawning. This isn't revenge, he said slowly. Aaron closed his eyes. No. It's extinction. The chamber trembled violently. Sections of the monolith began to flicker, phasing in and out of existence like the ships outside. Even this place, the last remnant, was starting to fail. Elias forced himself to stand. Then we stop it. Aaron opened his eyes again. There's no stopping it, he said quietly. Elias stepped closer, his voice hardening. Then we change it. Aaron stared at him, really looked at him for the first time. At the man who stood before him. Not a god. Not a being beyond limits. Just human. And yet, something about that felt stronger. The star pulsed again. This time it hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. Elias saw it. Felt it. It's reacting, he said. Aaron frowned. To what? Elias met his gaze. To us. Outside, the last of the coalition ships vanished into nothing. But the fractures didn't stop. They kept spreading. Faster now. Hungrier. Inside, the star flared brighter than ever, its light no longer contained, bleeding into every corner of the chamber. Reality screamed under the strain. Elias stepped forward, reaching toward the core despite the overwhelming force pushing against him. Aaron, he said. The man didn't respond, because he already understood. This wasn't about the past anymore. This was about what humanity chose to become next. The star pulsed again. Waiting. Not for destruction. but for a decision, and for the first time since it awakened. It hesitated, the star trembled. Not violently, not like before. This was different. Uncertain. For the first time since it awakened, it wasn't acting on instinct. It was waiting. Elias felt it. That impossible awareness pressing against his mind. Not hostile, not cold, but searching. Judging. "What is it doing?" Mara whispered, her voice barely holding together. Elias didn't look away from the burning core. "It's not just a weapon," he said quietly. Aaron's eyes narrowed. No, it never was. Another pulse spread outward, but weaker this time. The fractures in space slowed, their jagged expansion stuttering as if something invisible had grabbed hold of them. Holding them back. Elias stepped closer, the light of the star reflecting in his eyes. "It's responding to intent," he said. Aaron turned to him sharply. "That's not possible. We designed it to act, not to think." "You said it yourself," Elias cut in. "You pushed beyond limits, beyond reality." A pause. Then softer. "Why would this be any different?" The chamber groaned around them. Sections of the walls flickered, moments of existence phasing in and out. The ancient inscriptions warped, some vanishing entirely, others reappearing in fragments. History unraveling. Mara clutched her console. "Commander, we're running out of time. The instability is accelerating again if we don't do something." "We will," Elias said. He stepped forward again, closer to the star than anyone else dared. The heat wasn't physical, it was something deeper. Pressure against his thoughts, his memories, his sense of self. It was reading him. Aaron watched in silence. For centuries he had waited. For this moment. For humanity to return. But not like this. Not weaker. Not smaller. And yet, Elias stood there without fear. Not because he didn't understand the danger, but because he did, and still chose to face it. "You're going to destroy everything," Elias said, his voice steady but firm. The star pulsed. A faint ripple of resistance. "I know why you exist," he continued. "I understand what they did to us." Another pulse. Sharper this time. Images flickered at the edge of his vision. War, loss, erasure. Pain. "Yes," Elias said, "we were wronged." The star brightened, reacting. "But this," he gestured around them to the collapsing space, the fading stars beyond. "This isn't justice." The light flared violently, as if anger had been struck. Aaron stepped forward. "Elias, be careful." "No," Elias said, not turning. "It needs to hear this." He took another step closer. The pressure intensified. His knees nearly buckled. But he held his ground. "We don't need to become what they feared," he said, louder now. "We don't need to erase everything just to prove we existed." The star pulsed again, and this time the fractures paused completely. Frozen, suspended between existence and nothingness. Mara gasped, "Commander, it's stopping." Aaron stared in disbelief. That shouldn't be possible. But it was, because this wasn't the humanity he remembered. This wasn't the unstoppable force that had pushed reality itself to its limits. This was something else. Something restrained. Something choosing. Elias extended his hand toward the star. The light surged around it, swirling like it was deciding whether to consume him or listen. "We were given a second chance," he said. His voice softened. "Maybe we didn't deserve it. Maybe they were right to fear us." The light flickered. Unstable. Conflicted. "But we're here now," Elias continued, "and we get to decide what that means." Aaron's chest tightened. For centuries, he had carried one truth. Humanity had gone too far. Had become too much. Had earned its destruction. But now, he wasn't so sure. Elias' voice dropped to a near whisper. "We don't need to be gods," he said. The star dimmed slightly. "We don't need to be unstoppable." The fractures in space began to shrink, slowly, cautiously. We just need to be better. Silence. Not empty. Not dead. But full. Waiting. Aaron stepped forward beside Elias. His hand trembled as he lifted it toward the star. For so long, he had believed this was the only way. The final answer. The last defense. But now he saw something else. A choice. If we shut it down, Aaron said quietly, they will come back. Elias nodded. Maybe. They'll try to erase us again. Maybe, Elias repeated. Aaron's jaw tightened. Then why risk it? Elias finally turned to him. Not as a commander. Not as a survivor. But as something simpler. Human. Because if we don't, he said, then they were right to fear us. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Unavoidable. The star pulsed again. One final time. But this pulse wasn't violent. It wasn't destructive. It was questioning. Aaron closed his eyes. Centuries of memory pressed down on him. War. Loss. Failure. But beneath all of it, hope, something he thought humanity had lost long ago. Slowly, he made his decision. His hand touched the light. And the star waited the moment Aaron's hand touched the star. Everything stopped. Not slowed. Not paused. Stopped. The fractures in space froze mid-spread, jagged lines of broken reality suspended like cracks in glass. The distant stars, half erased, flickered faintly, caught between existence and nothing. Even the light of the star itself held still, as if the universe had drawn a single, silent breath, and refused to let it out. Elias didn't move, didn't speak, because he felt it. That presence, not just power, not just memory, but something deeper. Awareness, listening. Aaron's voice came, barely above a whisper. For so long, we thought this was the only way. His fingers trembled against the surface of the star. The light swirled around his hand, not burning, not resisting, waiting. We thought if we didn't end them, he continued, they would end us. Elias stepped beside him, his eyes fixed on the suspended fractures stretching into infinity. And maybe they still will, Elias said quietly. Aaron glanced at him. No, Elias added, softer now, that's not the point. The star pulsed faintly. A question. Elias took a slow breath. You were built to finish the war, he said, addressing the star as if it could understand, because now he knew it could. To erase the ones who erased us. The light flickered. Images rippled through the chamber, brief flashes of the past. Collapsing worlds, vanishing fleets, humanity standing at the center of a storm it could no longer control. Pain, fear, loss. But that war is over, Elias said. A sharper pulse. Disagreement. No, Elias said firmly, listen to me. The pressure in the chamber rose, but he didn't step back. They didn't just fear our power, he continued. They feared what we might become. The star dimmed slightly. Listening. Aaron's voice broke in, quieter now. And they were right. Elias didn't argue. Maybe they were, he admitted. Maybe we went too far. The fractures trembled. Unstable again. But we're not that anymore, Elias said. The words echoed, stronger than anything before. Look at us. He spread his arms, not to the star, but to the fragile reality around them. We're not gods, we're not unstoppable, we're barely holding on. The star flickered. Conflicted. And yet, Elias said, voice steady, we're still here. Silence followed. Not empty, but weighing. Aaron looked at the star again, really looked at it. For centuries, he had seen it as a weapon. A final answer. A last resort. But now, he saw something else. A reflection of what humanity had been, and what it could choose to become. They gave us a second chance, Elias said softly. The fractures began to contract, slowly pulling back, like a tide retreating from the shore. They erased our past, he continued, stripped us down to nothing. Aaron closed his eyes. And maybe that saved us. The star pulsed again. Softer, no longer violent, no longer demanding. Just waiting. Aaron exhaled slowly. The weight of centuries lifted just slightly. Enough. He looked at Ilias. Then back at the star. We don't need you anymore, he said. The words trembled but held. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the light changed. Not dimming, not fading, but calming. The chaotic energy within the star smoothed, its violent currents settling into something stable, controlled. Contained. Outside the monolith, the remaining coalition ships, those that had not yet fled, held their positions. Watching, waiting, Ilias turned toward the projection of space beyond. They're still there, Mara said quietly. Aaron nodded. They always will be. Ilias stepped forward, his voice firm. Then we show them. He moved to the central interface, the same ancient system that had awakened the star. For a moment, he hesitated. Then he activated it. A signal burst outward. Not a weapon. Not a threat. A message. Across every channel. Every frequency. Every layer of space they could reach. Ilias spoke clearly. We are humanity. His voice carried, not just through the monolith, but into the vast silence beyond. We remember now. The coalition ships didn't move. Didn't fire. And we are not what you feared, Ilias continued. A pause. Heavy. Final. We choose to be better. Silence followed. Long. Unbroken. Then, one of the ships moved. Not forward. Not to attack. Away. Another followed. Then another. Within moments, the fleet began to retreat, breaking formation, slipping back into the darkness from which they came. Not in chaos. Not in defeat. In uncertainty. Mara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. They're leaving. Ilias didn't respond. He was watching the stars. Because they were coming back. The fractures sealed completely, reality smoothing itself as if nothing had ever been broken. The distant lights, once flickering on the edge of existence, now burned steady and bright. Aaron staggered slightly. Ilias caught him. It's over, Ilias said. Aaron smiled faintly. No, he whispered. Not over. He looked at the stars one last time. Beginning. His body began to fade. Not dying. Not breaking. But releasing. I was never meant to stay, Aaron said softly. Ilias tightened his grip. You don't have to. Aaron shook his head. I've already lived my part. His gaze softened. But you. He looked at Ilias. At all of them. You get to choose the next one. And then, he was gone. The chamber fell silent. The star remained, but no longer wild, no longer dangerous. Just waiting. Dormant. Ilias stood there for a long moment. Then slowly turned toward the viewport. The galaxy stretched out before them. Vast. Uncertain. Full of things that feared them. Full of things they didn't yet understand. But for the first time, that didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a chance. Ilias took a breath. Set a course, he said quietly. The crew looked at him. Where to, Commander? Mara asked. Ilias' eyes stayed on the stars. Forward. And at the edge of the galaxy, humanity began again.